finished. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. Let's give you that live look once again there at the White House as we continue to follow the Trump administration, which recently agreed to a plan to cancel student loan debt for eligible borrowers under certain income-driven repayment programs. Recently, the American Federation of Teachers and the Department of Education reached a legal agreement on October 17th, and Fox Business obtained a statement from the American Federation of Teachers, with the organization saying that the deal awaiting court approval requires the Education Department to follow through on debt forgiveness for eligible borrowers in 2025 and guarantee they won't face a surprise tax hit. Eligible student loan borrowers can have their debt canceled under some plans, including income-driven repayment programs. The Education Department sent emails to eligible borrowers about their options for loan forgiveness. And we wanted to ask you, the viewers on Live Now from Fox, before we bring in our guests to discuss all of this, do you support federal student loan forgiveness programs? We'd love to hear from you. We'll pop this up throughout the interview here. You can scan that QR code on the top right-hand corner of your screen or head to livenowfox.com/connect. So what does this mean for you? We're going to bring in Tim Phillips, Nestpoint Director of Government Affairs and Global Strategies. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox, Tim. We appreciate it this morning.
Good to be with you, Christy.
My first question, a brief overview here of this recent agreement between the Department of Education and the American Federation of Teachers regarding student loan forgiveness. Break this all down for us.
Well, it's important to note that this program was actually passed by Congress in 2007. So way back in 2007, it went into effect in 2009. And what it said was that borrowers could take 15% of their discretionary income at that time. They had to go through forms, federal forms. And then if they paid the agreed amount over the course of at least a decade and they kept up with their payments, then the rest of it would be forgiven. So the people who are receiving these notices now are people who've been in this program for over a decade. So this is not something new that President Trump and his team are suddenly deciding to, forgive student loans. This is simply processing folks who've been in a program for a decade, literally going back a decade or more in some cases. So the numbers, we're not sure exactly how many people, Christy, we're talking about. The best estimates coming out of the Department of Education and other places are somewhere between 1.5 million and 2.1 million Americans.
Can we delve a little bit deeper here and talk about the criteria borrowers must meet to be considered eligible for loan forgiveness under all of this?
Yeah, it was income based. So the more you made, the more you paid, which I don't like that. It's penalizing success, right? I don't like how this program was set up. It was set up late in the Bush administration. You had a Democrat Congress and a Republican president at that time. I don't like this program. At the same time, and I think this is why it's not being canceled now by the administration, it was agreed upon, the people paid into it for a decade at least, sometimes more than that. So I think that's why the administration is allowing these to be processed. I got to tell you, this whole student loan thing is one of the biggest scams in modern American history, Christy. I know you've covered it before. These colleges and universities really trapped kids making decisions at 18 and 19 years old to go hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt so you could pay big fat salaries to people who frankly just didn't deserve it at these universities and colleges, most of whom are liberal. This whole thing has been a big scam over the last 30 years. Hopefully people's eyes are open to it now.
Can we discuss a little bit further here this provision to prevent a surprise tax hit for borrowers? Can you explain how exactly this is going to be implemented? And also, is there a problem of trying to achieve this by the end of 2025?
So during the Biden administration, in one of their big spending bills in 2021, fall of 2021, they put this provision in that said, hey, if you're making these student loan payments, they're now tax-free under the provisions of what was then the Biden spending bill. So that's the reference I think that a lot of people are using here now. It is a provision in the law. And I think at this point, the Trump administration, it would be very difficult to claw back any of this because it was already an existing act of Congress that was signed into law by a prior administration.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk a little bit further here about what this all means for the future of student loan forgiveness. How is this agreement going to impact the broader landscape of all of this?
I hope, Christy, that it does not lead to broader, just wanton forgiveness. I do think that's not fair to Americans who went to trade schools and paid their own way through, or who did not go to college because they couldn't afford it, and they and their parents realized, hey, we're not going to go into debt for these degrees. It's not fair to all of those Americans to say, well, you know what, we're going to forgive the loans. In a wanton fashion to Americans who did choose to do those loans. So hopefully it will not lead to broader forgiveness. I don't think that's where the Trump administration is. It really strongly seems that way, and I support them in that. This appears to be a specific group of student loan borrowers who joined this program that was created way back in 2007, went into effect in 2009. They made agreed upon payments based on their discretionary income. And they paid those for over a decade, and now they've reached a point where they can finish, get the final forgiveness. It is important to note they did pay for over a decade. I don't like how the program was set up. It's not right to say, well, if you're successful, we're going to penalize you with higher discretionary payments. That's not a very American way to look at things, to penalize success. At the same time, these folks did pay over a decade in an agreed upon contract with the federal government. So it seems like we're going to see forgiveness for this very narrow, limited subset of people, somewhere between 1.5 million and 2.1 million. It seems like the administration, their hands are tied here. They're not going to take issue with it. So it does seem like the Department of Education is processing these forms. I do not think it will lead to broader forgiveness. I would be shocked if this administration and a Republican Congress would suddenly start forgiving loans in a way that just isn't fair to so many Americans who made the decision not to take these loans at the time when they were young. So I do not think it will lead to a broader forgiveness of these student loans.
My last question for you before we wrap up here. For borrowers who want to stay informed about all of this, how can they do so?
Well, they can go if they're paying into if they're up to date and paying their borrowers. There's a portal that can tell them how much they owe, what they're eligible for. Within the confines of their own situation, they have a unique identification number with the federal government. Also, they can check there, but they can also check with their borrowers as well. But if you go to there are various federal government websites. The Department of Education runs a couple of them that are specifically set up. You can punch your identification number in, and they can tell you where your situation stands, where your loan stands.
All right, very helpful there. Tim Phillips, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. We do appreciate it.
Absolutely, Christy.
Let's pop up this poll one more time before we head away for a commercial break. A lot of you weighed in, and we thank you for that. Do you support federal student loan forgiveness programs? 43% saying yes, 57% saying no.